Each Skylanders game has its problems. Some are more noticeable than others, but they all have something that would make the game better if it wasn't there. In this video, I'm going to be going through all the Skylanders game, and I'm going to be fixing one aspect that I think would do the absolute most to make the game better. Either getting rid of something or adding something that should have been there from the start to make each game feel better. For the most part, I think these are changes that everyone would appreciate, and they're not really going to hurt any of the games. So this is still just my opinion, what I would personally change, but I think it's based off a lot of stuff that the community and Skylanders fans want in general. So without further ado, let's jump right into it with Spyro's Adventure and what I would fix for that game. You might be confused what exactly I'm going to change for Spyro's Adventure, because for the most part, it's a very complete game that set the foundation for the entire franchise, so it's hard for it to really have any glaring issues as the first Skylanders game. What I'm actually going to change for is I'm going to add difficulty settings. This is something that starting in Giants became a staple for the entire franchise, being able to set the difficulty for your personal preference. A lot of people like to play the games on Nightmare mode and get a ton of fun out of it. Some people don't like difficulty at all, might want to play on easy mode. So I think having the difficulty settings is something that will only benefit Spyro's Adventure, because it is something that holds it back and makes it show its age more than a lot of other features. The fact that you can't change the difficulty, because most modern games nowadays always have a difficulty setting to make it more accessible to new players. If Spyro's Adventure had this would allow for more different types of playthroughs for different types of people, and would probably improve Spyro's Adventure's reputation among the Skylanders community. Or it might not, but overall, I think Spyro's Adventure, for the most part, it's hard to really find any glaring flaws with it, which is why I'd have to go with this, because this is something that would allow a lot more possibilities with this game, considering it doesn't have them now. If we added difficulty settings, it would be a much better game, in my opinion. That would be a lot more welcoming to many other players who like to play on a difficulty other than just normal mode. Now, Giants is kind of difficult, because for the most part, Giants is like the most beloved game in the franchise, and its gameplay is pretty much perfect. There's a lot of aspects of it that are pretty much perfect and are the peak of Skylanders. But what I'm going to change is the roster. What I would want to do is double the roster, because it's weird that Giants has such a small roster, considering Spyro's Adventure had 32 Skylanders, Swap Force had 32 Skylanders, Trap Team I think had 36 Skylanders, and then Superchargers was the only dip off. As someone who really cares about the roster, and when you have a bigger roster overall, there's more potential for there to be more awesome Skylanders, I would want Giants to have a roster that's twice the size of what it currently is. Only having 2 Skylanders per element, I really felt held back the opportunities that we got from Giants. I think if we had 2 Giants per element and 2 cores per element from Giants, it would be much better. That's what Swap Force and Trap Team did, and those are some of the 2 fan favorite games. And to someone who really cares about roster, having a smaller roster really limits how much I can like a Skylanders game, because once again, the roster I think is one of the most important parts of a Skylanders game, and when you have a good one, that is pretty much that can carry the entire game if nothing else is even that good. So I think doubling the roster for Giants would be one of the best moves, especially considering the levels, the music, the story, the gameplay, almost everything else in Giants is like peak Skylanders. So improving their roster is really the only one for me here, the really only option that makes sense. That's why I'm going to pick that. When you look at Swap Force, you're probably not going to be surprised to hear me say what I think. If you know me well, you know that I do not like the Swap Force levels. I think the Swap Force levels are too long, too bland, and too similar to one another. Really, the only 2 unique levels that actually feel different and like they serve a purpose other than just expanding on levels that have already been there, future levels, and just being completely continuous and feeling like there's nothing breaking up the game. The only 2 that really do this are Phantasm Forest and the Rampant Ruins. Those 2 levels I think are great because they offer something completely unique. They are very different. Of course, the Chaos level does the same thing because it's the final level. But when you look at all the swap themed levels, all of the desert themed levels, and all of the winter snow themed levels, they all just feel so bland and so similar. I think this is a big issue with Swap Force. I would completely get rid of this if I could fix the levels. I would make it more similar to a game like Superchargers, in which every single level is unique and has its own fun new gimmick, but still doesn't feel too out there. Something where you just don't get bored. You don't feel like you're trapped in the same area for hours on end with how long the Swap Force levels are. And something else I would fix with the Swap Force levels is make them shorter. I think on average a Skylanders level should take about 10 minutes if you're just playing through without really going to any of the side areas. Something that I think Trap Team perfected is actually the level length. If Swap Force had pretty similar level length to Trap Team, then it would be a lot better, and if the levels didn't have repeated themes that got very repetitive very fast, then I also think Swap Force would greatly improve. So I would fix those 2 aspects of the levels with Swap Force. Now, looking at Trap Team, there's a lot of issues as far as the game goes, but none of them, I think, affect the gameplay consistently as one, and that is the glitches. The glitches in Trap Team can get very annoying very fast, and there's something that's kind of just sitting in the back of my mind the entire time that I'm playing. It's hard to not encounter glitches in Trap Team, which makes the game frustrating to play through because you never know when something is going to glitch out the game and make it very difficult for you to get past the level, or in some cases just completely impossible. There's so many soft locks in this game that are possible and that like generally happen pretty often. It is, I would say, when I'm doing a playthrough of Trap Team, there's about a 50-50 shot that I'm going to get soft locked and have to restart a level at one point. It really sucks, so we have to deal with that, and I think not having this would really serve Trap Team very well. I think this would make the game a lot more beloved, and it would make it feel a lot more like Giants, because Trap Team just does not feel polished, and if it didn't have all these bugs and glitches ruining the entire experience, I think a lot of people would like it just as much as they like Giants, because I think Trap Team feels very similar to Giants, just with all these glitches, which makes it feel unpolished, unfinished, and not near the level of Giants. So I think Trap Team, if we removed all the glitches, made it feel more polished, made it feel like an actual clean, finished game that we can get through without having to worry about getting soft locked or getting glitched out or my Skylander dying because I'm not doing any damage. All these glitches, if they were not there, the game would be much better. Superchargers is the only Skylanders game in the franchise that I think would legitimately be my favorite game if it did not have a gimmick at all. The gimmick of vehicle sections that are forced on you throughout the levels, I think, is absolutely terrible. What I really hate the most about it is that the racing side mode is actually good. I like the racing side mode. What I don't like, however, is forced vehicle sections where you are literally just driving and nothing else. It is not fun to just be driving around and that's it. That's all you're getting out of it. It's not like you're racing against anyone. It's not like you have anything to lose by going too slow. I really don't like the vehicle sections. Don't like that they're forced on you. They kind of break up the level. Once I feel like I'm really getting into a Superchargers level and getting invested into it, a vehicle section just comes out of nowhere and kind of ruins the fun for me. I really don't like them. And it's weird because I'm someone who actually likes racing games, and I like the racing side moded Superchargers. Once again, I just don't like the forced vehicle sections because all they are is just driving. It's just driving. I do it every day. I don't need to do it in a video game. It doesn't feel any different. It's very boring. I think Superchargers would legitimately be my favorite game if it did not have vehicle sections. If we could just play through the level like a normal Skylanders game without getting gameplay completely different from anything else we've ever seen in the franchise to this point, I think it would make Superchargers just a whole lot better. And I personally, I know I would like it so much better if vehicle sections were eliminated completely and there was only the racing side mode, and that was the only sort of implementation of the vehicle gimmick. I think that would be much better. Just keep the vehicle sections in a separate mode, or if you're going to put them in the levels, at least make them racing and make them optional so they don't just drag on and they don't force you to do them. Looking at Skylanders Imaginators, as it is one of the most hated games in the franchise, there are countless things people want to change. There are a bunch of glaring flaws with Imaginators that people want to get rid of, but the one that I think would probably help the game the most is just to give it a decent story, because the story in Imaginators is by all means just a complete joke, and I don't think anyone likes it. So if we replaced it with just a solid story, it doesn't have to be the best story in the world, just something that works, something that people aren't going to just laugh at 24/7 because of how atrocious it is, I think this would go a long way to make Imaginators a more respectable game. I think the gameplay and everything else is fine. The roster is great. The levels, I think, are pretty decent. But again, the story is just kind of what drags the whole thing down. If we could get a good story that makes all the levels feel like they're actually connected in a way that makes sense, then I think Imaginators work out great. It's very difficult for a Skylanders game to have a good story while also keeping diverse level themes, because the story wants to stay consistent. The levels are also going to stay consistent as well, which is what we see from a game like Swap Force, but that makes it feel pretty bland. Then you look at Trap Team, I think it actually had a good balance between the story and the levels, where the story is still pretty good, but it allows you to go to multiple different locations to sort of progress the game while keeping gameplay fresh as you have all these different level themes. If Imaginators was able to do something like this, where it had a Good story, doesn't need to be the best one in the world, just needs to be decent, but something that makes sense and still allows to connect various different locations in Skylands in order to make fun, unique, and enticing level designs that do not get repetitive. I think this would very well work in Imaginators' favor and make it just feel like a much better Skylanders game. These are all my personal opinions, but I did base them off just sort of what the Skylanders community seems to want to see and seems to complain about the most when it comes to Skylanders games. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was pretty fun to make, and it was pretty fun to sort of discover what I would change with each Skylanders game. If you guys would change something completely different, please let me know in the comments down below. I'd be very interested to see what you guys have to say. Without further ado, I'm going to head out, so hope you guys enjoyed this video. See you on the next one. Bye-bye, everybody.